team had rolled in, still half-dressed in their pads and tracksuits, loud as hell and chucking fries at each other. I was behind on my closing list and already dreading the bus ride home. That's when I saw him, an old guy, standing like he wasn't sure if he belonged. He wore a clean black coat, dark wool, probably brushed off that morning. His tie was ironed flat like he still believed in dignity, even for a Tuesday afternoon in a crumbling mall. I cleared the folding chair we kept near the mop sink, wiped it with a bar towel and waved him over. "It's not glamorous," I said, "but it's warm, and nobody'll bother you." He gave me this half smile, like I'd just solved a riddle he didn't expect anyone to answer. He moved slow. Every step looked like it cost him something. When he reached the chair, he said he'd forgotten his wallet. He looked embarrassed when he said it, like the kind of man who'd been raised to never ask twice for anything. "I'll cover it," I told him, keeping my voice low so Vernon's camera dome wouldn't catch too much. "No big deal. Soup from Hank's, coffee from my side, no charge." Quick before we dive in, drop a comment with your city or country. Let's see how far this story reaches. All right, here's the story. I pulled 8 crumpled ones and a few quarters from the little corner of my tip jar I kept for bus fare. I slid the change into both registers. Soup at Hank's, coffee on mine. He neither argued nor offered to come back and pay later. He just sat and watched the gray rain drum the skylight like it meant something. "My wife used to sit with me right here," he said after a while, voice soft but steady. "Back when this mall had music and people cared what their hair looked like." He looked at the seat next to him like he could still see her there. "Her name was Ruth," he said. And he said it like it mattered, like she wasn't just gone, but carried. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the best kind of kindness. He finished the soup, slow and neat, folded the coffee lid down like it was a habit. Then he stood, walked over, and rested his hand on my shoulder. "You're a decent kid," he said. His voice had more steel than his legs. "It's just soup and coffee," I said. "Yeah, that's what makes it decent." He asked for my name, and I told him, "Elliot." He nodded, like he was saving it in his head for later. "Keep that chair open," he said. "Someone else will need it." He left without another word. No bag, no phone out, no thank you speech. Just stepped into the sleet and disappeared. I went back to wiping counters and trying not to look up at the black camera dome mounted above Register 3. I could feel it watching. Vernon always watched. The next morning, right after I clocked in, Vernon flagged me with that 2-finger point he used when he wanted something done quiet, but still humiliating. I followed him into the service hallway behind the soda fountains, the one just under camera 3. The light above us buzzed like it was chewing on its own wires. He had a clipboard in his hand already, paper filled in, name, time, date. Like this wasn't a conversation, it was a sentence. "Unauthorized distribution of product," he said, like he'd been practicing the phrase in the mirror. He held up a printed still from the security feed. There I was, right hand extended, soup tray sliding across the counter. Looked like a damn hostage video. "You serious?" I said. I couldn't even fake polite. "That was soup and a coffee. The guy didn't have his wallet. I paid for it out of my tips." "POS doesn't take tips," he said flat, not even looking up. "It's not legal tender, Elliot." I stared at him. It came out of my own pocket. I didn't comp it, didn't use a coupon code, didn't mark it down. I paid. "You're not cleared to make those kinds of decisions," he said. "This isn't a soup kitchen. We're not a ministry." He smiled without meaning it. "That's in the handbook." He clicked his pen once, then twice, wrote something at the bottom of the sheet. Then he handed me another form stapled behind the first. "Effective immediately, your hours are reduced to 12 per week for the next 2 weeks," he said. "Monday and Tuesday shifts only, 11:30 to 2:15. You'll be scheduled for non-service prep tasks." "You're cutting 20 hours?" I said. "Because I fed a man a cup of soup?" "Because you violated operating procedure," he said. "Cost variance is $47. He flipped another sheet. plus 15 for waste, napkins and condiments. Hank stood off to the side, arms folded, jaw clenched. Vernon turned toward him just enough to make it official. Witness present? Yeah, Hank muttered. I'm here. Then Vernon handed me the final sheet, stapled and highlighted in orange. Final warning. Any repeat action, any heroic improvisation, and we move to immediate termination. Please sign. He held out the pen, same one he'd clicked twice already. I took it and signed, jaw locked so tight I felt my molars pulse. My stomach dropped when I saw the camera's red light blinking in the corner above us. He read the warning out loud, slow and clear, like a goddamn school principal calling out a detention list. I stood there, trying not to look at the blinking light, thinking about my mom's insulin, her blood pressure meds, the 5 copays I was already behind on. I could hear her voice in my head. Don't make a scene. Just get through it. When he was done, he said, You'll be moved off the bar until further notice. No beverage duty, no register. Prep and sanitation only. So I'm on drain bleach and lid duty now? Correct, he said. And stock rotation. You'll clock out after the cups are counted. I didn't say thank you. Didn't give him the satisfaction of a nod. I turned and walked back out to the front, heart thumping, teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. That whole shift, I scrubbed the syrup heads off the soda guns and bleached the mop sink, burned through 2 pairs of gloves, and still managed to tear the skin under my thumb. The drain smelled like moldy chicken and expired mop water. My shoulders screamed from being bent under the counters for 3 straight hours. Every so often I'd hear someone order a soup and a coffee. I couldn't help it. I'd glance toward the mop station chair. It was empty now, but I could still see him. Milton, quiet coat, tired hands, that little squeeze on my shoulder like he meant it. Hank came by mid-shift, dropped a wrapped hot dog on the sanitizer tray next to me. He's been gunning for you a while, he said, voice low. I figured, I said. He waited until he had the camera still. Whole thing smells like cheap power trip, Hank muttered. But hey, we're not a ministry, right? I didn't answer. My hands were in the bleach bucket, scrubbing the gasket from the blender pitcher until the rubber gave and my knuckles dragged across the blades. I didn't even feel it until the hot water turned pink. Later, I went to get bandages from the supply drawer and saw Vernon had logged the hot dog as unauthorized food item, flagged for deduction. That night, I took the bus home with 6 fewer bucks in my pocket than I started with. My fingers throbbed with every bump on the road, and the paper with the final warning crinkled in my bag like it was laughing at me. The Monday shift hit like wet drywall, heavy and hollow. Dead hours. Nothing but footsteps echoing through empty tile and the occasional elderly mall walker doing slow laps with their headphones in. I mopped the same stretch of floor twice just so I wouldn't look like I was standing still. Vernon hadn't spoken to me since the final warning, but I could feel his eyes every time I passed under the black bubble camera, watching for a mistake. Claudia texted me from the library at Greene County College. 3 pictures of used textbooks and a screenshot of her checking account. The math didn't work. I told her not to skip meals. She sent back a thumbs up and I'll be fine. But I knew she was already living off vending machine peanut butter crackers and gas station coffee. Right after that, I found a note taped to the time card cubbies. Della's nurse had left it that morning, said the dialysis bag connectors needed replacement and that insurance wouldn't cover another set until the following week. I read it 3 times, then stood over the busted espresso grinder, trying to figure out if I could push the electric bill or let my phone get cut off for a few days. Hank came by around 3, handed me a hot dog wrapped in foil, and muttered, "Mall like this'll chew up the decent ones first. Bet you anything." I didn't have a comeback, just took the hot dog and ate it slow between cleaning out the sauce bottles and wiping down chairs no one had sat in since noon. That's when I started noticing things that didn't add up. Training mode. I kept seeing it flash across the POS screen when no one was training. Orders with no totals. Reprints missing barcodes. The cash drawer always closed in balance, but the numbers felt too round, too clean, like someone was smoothing them over before count. And the tenants, God, they were pissed. The guy from the falafel cart kept complaining about mall fees that didn't exist 6 months ago. Vernon blamed it on corporate, said the lease had clauses for inflation adjustments. Marisol from the taco stall said she never signed anything like that. He told her to mind her lane. I kept my mouth shut, but I was watching. Then Rosa showed up. She came by during a lull, bundled in one of those fuzzy fleeces and smelling like eucalyptus hand cream. Retired math teacher, used to teach at my high school, actually. She ordered a coffee and a small fry from Hank's side. When I handed it over, she pulled out a $5 bill and held it out like she wasn't done. "This," she said, tapping the bill with 2 fingers, "is for the next person who needs it. Just one of those days, you know." I didn't know what to do, so I rang up a training mode order, printed the receipt, and stapled it to the corkboard next to the sugar packets. Just a slip of paper. No big sign, no rules. That night I kept thinking about it. Not just the $5, the way she said it, like she expected that moment to matter. Next day I brought in my own thumbtacks and cleaned off the bulletin board by the hot water machine. No label, no hashtags, just receipts. If someone wanted to cover the next person, I'd print the item, ring it through with a void or a training sale, and slide my own tip in to make the drawer settle if Vernon hovered too close. I kept a small notebook in my apron, wrote down who left what and who took what. If it looked like someone needed it, I didn't ask questions. If I didn't have enough in my tips, Hank chipped in $1 or $2 from his pocket and never said a word about it. He did give me a warning, though. "Don't let that bastard catch you doing this," he said one Tuesday, as we cleaned the blender together. "Managers like him? They'll twist a good thing into a write-up, make it look like theft if they feel like it." "I know," I said, "but it's the only decent part of the job right now." He nodded once, like he understood, then went back to scraping old cheese out of a melted pan. The first person to actually use one was a young woman who looked like she hadn't eaten a hot meal in 2 days. She stood near the counter for a full minute, staring at the receipts. I didn't say a word. Then she pointed at one that said, "Soup plus small drink," in red Sharpie. "You mean this?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Take it. That's what it's for." She grabbed the receipt like it might disappear and whispered, "Thanks," like she was embarrassed to need it. Hank ladled her soup without saying a word. She left without touching the condiments. That little corner, my next one's covered board, became my version of a break room. I'd tidy it when things were slow, make sure no receipts had fallen, fix any thumbtacks that were slipping. It wasn't a movement or anything, wasn't viral, just quiet kindness in a place that had forgotten how to care about people, a paper trail of decency pinned up between the coffee stirrers and the janitor closet. I started coming home with wet socks and 2 fewer dollars, but I didn't care. That wall was the first thing that made me feel like the job wasn't just about survival. People started pinning their own receipts without even asking me. One guy left a soda and fries combo with a note that said, "For the next guy who gets dumped." I smiled when I saw it. Didn't laugh, just smiled. There were still reversals on the POs. Still weird training entries and phantom discounts I didn't recognize. But I didn't have time to deal with that yet. Not while there were receipts to tape, grinders to clean, and a little wall of scraps that felt more like purpose than anything in Vernon's binder. By Thursday, the receipts on the corkboard were spreading like ivy. People were folding their own slips, even scribbling things like, "For someone who's had a day," or "For a tired mom." I didn't need to explain it anymore. It was just happening. Lunchtime hit, and the food court limped to life. 5 families and some solo eaters picking at soggy pizza and orange chicken that looked like it had been lacquered. Hank was firing up the fryer for a second batch of corn dogs. I was halfway through a batch of refills on the condiment bar when I heard it. "Elliot Webb?" The voice didn't ask. It announced. It cut across the counter noise, the vent hum, even the mall music trickling from speakers that hadn't been cleaned since Bush was president. I turned around, heart punching a little harder than normal. Nobody used my last name here. Nobody had reason to. The guy stood out like a banker at a carnival. Tall, late 50s, gray suit with sharp creases, Leather shoes that hadn't seen food court tile until that second. He didn't look around, didn't check the menu or the greasy murals behind us. He was scanning people like a ledger, eyes cold, focused, steady. "Are you Elliot Webb?" he asked. I nodded, still holding a mustard bottle in one hand and a stack of napkin sleeves in the other. "Yes, sir. That's me." He gave a tight nod, turned slightly, and pointed past me. "Is Vernon on site? This concerns operations. I'll need him to join us at the counter." He said operations like it came with an echo. I didn't even answer. Hank had already stepped out from behind the grill, eyebrows up like he smelled a surprise health inspection. Vernon came trotting out of the back hallway, his game face already on, binder in hand, tie a half-inch off-center like always. He offered one of our laminated menus like this guy might want to see our daily specials. The man didn't even glance at it. He laid a dark leather folder on the counter instead, unsnapped it with one clean motion. "My name is Franklin Shore. I'm an attorney for the estate of Milton Ware." Everything inside me stilled. Milton. I hadn't said his name out loud since that day at the mop station chair. My stomach twisted, and it wasn't from the fryer smell. Franklin kept talking. "Mr. Ware passed last Friday, peacefully at home. His instructions were clear. Certain matters are to be disclosed in person and with staff present, specifically regarding this property and Mr. Webb." Vernon shifted his weight, still trying to figure out if he was being challenged or ignored. "Is this about a legal dispute?" he asked, all calm and condescending. "We have a corporate counsel for that." Franklin raised one eyebrow. "No dispute. This is a formal delivery of a private codicil, as amended and signed 2 days after Mr. Webb and Mr. Ware's interaction here." Then he pulled out a folded piece of paper, cream-colored, handwritten. He cleared his throat and read it. "To the young man named Elliot who offered me soup and space, and asked for nothing. My wife Ruth and I sat in this court when it was still new. We used to dream big here. You gave me back a piece of that for one quiet hour. That matters." Franklin folded it carefully, like it was holy. He insisted this be read in full view of staff and regulars. His request was dignity and simplicity. I didn't move. Couldn't. Even the pretzel stand kid shut his warmer and leaned forward. A woman in a parka whispered something to her kid and pointed at the counter. Everyone was watching, and not in the usual mall gossip way. Franklin continued like he was reading instructions. Mr. Ware retained a minority ownership stake in the Food Court LLC, along with a recorded deed to a waterfront parcel licensed for mobile food service. As of the filing date, 3 days prior to his death, his share has been legally transferred to Elliot Webb. Vernon let out a noise that sounded like a cough choked down too late. Franklin kept going. In addition, the deed for the waterfront food service parcel has been assigned directly to Mr. Webb. All liens cleared, estate settled, titles verified. Vernon tried to speak. This creates a disruption. We need clarity on what... Franklin held up a palm, slow and flat. "Don't interrupt me. These are final instructions per Milton Ware's will. You are legally required to acknowledge receipt, in view of employees, as specified." Hank leaned over to whisper near my ear. "You okay, kid?" I nodded barely. My knees weren't sure what year it was, but my hands had stopped shaking. Franklin slid a second folder across the counter. "These are the operating documents. They include voting rights, amendment clauses, and consent designations regarding non-routine changes to food court structure or leasing practices." Vernon stared at the folder like it was radioactive. "You'll sign here," Franklin said, confirming you've received the documents. Mr. Webb will sign as the assigned recipient and new minority member." Vernon's jaw ticked. He reached into his pocket for his wintergreen gum and popped a piece in like that'd give him time to recover. Franklin didn't budge. I signed. Pen smooth. Hand weirdly steady for a moment I couldn't fully wrap my head around. Vernon signed too, though it looked like it burned him to do it. He didn't speak again. The people in the court hadn't gone back to eating. A few clapped, awkward, unsure but genuine. Rosa was near the corner, nodding like she already knew this part was coming, like she understood the math of kindness in a way none of us ever could. Hank clapped twice, then stopped. "Guess we got ourselves a twist in the script," he muttered. Franklin snapped the folders shut and extended a hand toward me. "Effective immediately," Franklin added. "You hold consent rights over non-routine operational changes. Filings are already in process. Congratulations, Mr. Webb. Mr. Ware believed in what you stood for, and now, by legal definition, you stand for part of this." Then he walked out without waiting for applause, leaving the sound of fryer oil and shock behind him. The court held its breath for a beat, then forks scraped again, and the low mall music crept back in. When the lunch rush trickled out and the court went back to its usual slow breathing, I ducked into the prep area where Hank was scraping the grill. "Can you hang tight after shift?" I asked him. "I need another set of eyes on something." He looked at me like he already knew what I was about to say. "Logs?" "Logs," I said. "Back 3 months." We waited until the last customer wandered off and Marisol turned her sign to closed. Then Hank pulled the last deposit envelopes from the locked drawer, and I brought up the POS archives on the old terminal in the back. The screen flickered like a tired streetlight. "Look here," I said, scrolling through lines. "Training mode voids, right around closing." He leaned in, glasses slipping down his nose. "Those comps got no guest complaint attached," he muttered. "And these cash outs? They don't land in any ledger." I started marking everything down with a pen on butcher paper. Every void, every phantom comp, every cash tip adjustment that didn't exist in policy. After an hour, my stomach was tight enough to cramp. I tallied the totals twice just to be sure. "Over $8,000, I said finally. 8,100 and some change, all in little slices. Hank blew out a breath. "Death by 1,049s and 99s, he said. Then he pointed at the screen. "That's not a mistake, son." I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. "Corporate tools, my ass," I muttered. "Looks like a double register." "That's exactly what it is," Hank said. "He's been skimming." I didn't yell, didn't even feel angry yet, just cold. I pulled out my phone and called Franklin. He picked up on the second ring. "Document don't accuse," he said immediately, like he'd been waiting. "I'll have a forensic auditor on site Thursday morning. Keep your mouth shut until then. No sudden moves." "I can do that," I said. He added, "And don't let him smell what you're doing. He'll cover his tracks fast if he knows." When I hung up, Hank was already closing out his station. "What now?" he asked. I stepped back out to the counter and looked at the vendors. Marisol was counting bills with her head down. The falafel guy had his eyes on the floor. "Now I pause the mall fee," I said. That night I walked stall to stall, talking to each tenant. "Until I see the paperwork, no more new mall fee," I told them. 2 of them cried, actual tears of relief, like somebody had just lifted a brick off their chests. That's when I decided this place wasn't going to eat them too. I went back to my own counter and grabbed a plain glass jar from under the sink, peeled off the old tip sticker and wrote kindness tokens on a strip of masking tape. I set it dead center on the counter. No frills. Then I printed a single page and taped it behind the register. "Customers may prepay a simple item. Cashier may do a silent check to zero out when needed. No hashtags, no speech. Just rules simple enough that even Vernon couldn't twist them." Next day I swapped my dead hours with Josh, the high school kid who worked nights but needed lunch money. Hank signed off on the swap while we waited for Franklin's paperwork. I took the night shifts so I could watch and learn. Night shifts changed everything. You see patterns you don't see in daylight. The way Vernon lingered near the cash drawer before leaving, the timing of training entries, the moments when the cameras pointed just a little off-center. Around midnight on my 3rd night, Hank leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "You stepped over a line you don't usually come back from," he said quietly. "You sure you're fine with that?" I wiped my hands on a towel. "I'm fine with that." He watched me for a second longer, then nodded and went back to his grill like nothing had happened. That jar sat between us, empty for now, but it felt like a flag planted on a hill. Not a speech, not a crusade, just a claim that the place could still belong to people instead of numbers. 2 nights after we started logging the skimming patterns, Marisol came by while I was wiping down the mustard pump and said, "Hey, you ever look in the old storage cage behind the janitor closet?" I told her I hadn't even known we had one. She laughed and said, "There's junk in there from when this place was a farmer's market in the 80s. I think there's signs. Old wooden ones. Hand-painted. Might be worth a look." Hank grabbed a butter knife from the prep tray, and we walked over after close. The cage was buried behind a rolling cart stacked with dead microwave ovens and a box of cracked salt shakers. The lock had rusted shut like it hadn't been touched in 20 years. Took us 10 minutes of twisting before it snapped. Inside, the air smelled like cardboard and old lemon oil. There were flyers brittle enough to fall apart when you touched them, a crate full of ketchup pump heads, 3 cracked stools, and leaning against the back wall, under a broken mop handle, was a chipped wooden sign. White paint, faded to eggshell. Deep green letters. Ruth and Milton's Market, hot coffee, hotter plans. Hank wiped the dust off with his sleeve and just stood there looking at it. "That's the kind of thing you build a place around," he said, voice lower than usual. We carried it back between us, like it might break. I used fishing wire to hang it over the shared seating area, right above the mop station where Milton had sat that first day. Hank climbed up the prep sink to hang a string of warm bulbs across the beam, and when we stepped back, the corner looked like something you'd actually want to come home to. Not a mall court, not a food court, just a corner with some soul. Claudia came down the next weekend with a canvas tote and a pack of clothespins. She started reworking the prepaid wall like it was her final project. She used twine and pins to display the receipts. For a tired nurse. For a trucker stuck in the storm. For whoever needs it today. People stopped in front of it like they were at a museum. Some left cash, some left new slips with nothing on them but a smiley face and the word soon. I kept the items simple. Nothing fancy or Instagram-worthy. Just stuff that could fill a stomach. A small soup from Hank's Grill. 1 plain taco. A drip coffee. 2-piece fried chicken from Marisol's side. I told the crew to keep it honest and quiet. If someone asked, you helped. If they didn't ask, you stayed out of their way. I printed out Milton's rule of kindness and had it laminated. Taped it to the counter under the kindness token jar. No one goes hungry here. Pay it forward if you can. That was it. No brand, no logo, no newsletter. Just plain words for a place that needed a heartbeat again. Then something happened I didn't expect. The other vendors started asking if they could carry tokens too. "Can I have a jar like yours?" Marisol asked. "I'll need a few slips," said the falafel guy. Even the pretzel kid, barely old enough to vote, taped a sticky note that said, "Pretzel for whoever's had a trash day." I printed a matching set of slips, 1 color for each station, just to keep things from turning into chaos. We didn't have a system, really, just a quiet kind of rhythm. Then one afternoon, Della's nurse called me. Said Mom had gotten dizzy in the hallway and was sitting down, but her BP was dropping and I should come home just in case. I tossed my apron on the hook and told Hank I had to go. "No problem," he said. "I'll run the close. You go." He texted me 2 hours later to say the safe was locked and double-counted, and that he'd put my jacket in the back with the receipt folder. I thanked him and told him Mom was okay. Just tired. That night, a reporter from the local paper came through. I didn't recognize her until she asked about the sign. She took a photo of the corner and the wall, and I told her we weren't doing it for a story. Next week, a tiny article ran. 3 paragraphs buried on page 4. No names, just a mention of a food court where kindness didn't come with a price tag. After that, the wall started filling faster. People showed up holding $5 bills and short notes. My dad used to bring me here. "I don't eat here, but I like what you're doing." Not much, but maybe this helps. It never got loud. It never went viral. But it grew. Vernon started walking through less. When he did, he'd squint at the warm bulbs like they were going to cause a power outage. "You get a permit for that sign?" he asked once, pointing at Ruth and Milton's market. "We'll file," I said, not looking up. "Franklin will confirm it falls under the lease carve-outs." He didn't say anything back, just walked off chewing his gum like it was the only thing he could control. Every night before I left, I'd straighten the pins and add new slips to the twine. Sometimes I'd find one with no item written on it, just someone's initials and a date. Those were my favorite. That meant someone remembered. And maybe that was the whole point. The health inspector showed up on a Wednesday just after lunch. No warning. Clipboard out, polo shirt tucked too tight, radio clipped to his belt like he expected trouble. He walked straight past the pretzel stall and straight to me. "There's a complaint on file," he said. "Name wasn't listed, but it flagged this location. I'll need to walk your area." He wasn't rude, but he wasn't smiling either. I could tell from the way he looked around that he didn't really want to be doing this, especially not in a mall food court with half the stalls half dead. I took him through our prep station, back room, fridge logs, and then let Hank walk him through the grill side. Nothing fancy. Nothing hidden. He checked the sanitizer levels, glanced at our last pest control slip, and ran a probe thermometer through the soup warmer just to be thorough. Only thing he wrote up was a cracked tile by the janitor's sink. Then he paused at the kindness token wall and tilted his head. "What's this?" "Prepaid receipts," I said. "People leave them for whoever needs one. We cross them off as they get used." He raised an eyebrow. The complaint flagged possible unsanitary community items, that the wall could be a contamination source. "They're receipts," I said, "not sandwiches." That cracked him. He chuckled, wrote "no violation" in the notes, and moved on. I didn't say Vernon's name. Didn't need to. 3 hours later, I got a text from Marisol. It was a screenshot of a post on a local Facebook group. Account name was something generic like Brian367, no profile photo older than a week. The post said, "New management coming soon to clean up the mess. Watch this space." Marisol's message just said, "You seeing this?" I screenshotted it and forwarded it to Franklin. He called me 10 minutes later. "It's bait," he said. "Ignore it. The forensic audit is almost done, and if you slip now, they'll call you reckless. Keep your standards clean. Sabotage hunts for dirt." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. That night I checked the local radar and saw the storm system they were talking about. A big, wet swirl over the coast, heading in like it had somewhere to be. If it landed the way they were saying, the mall would shut down early and probably stay shut. But people would still need food, still need heat, still need light, and a place to sit down. I called Tariq, the old maintenance guy. He hadn't worked a shift in months, but he picked up like he'd been waiting. "Tariq, does the rink still have backup power?" He didn't even pause. "They keep a diesel generator in the old locker room. It'll run partial if you're smart about the circuit load. Lights and warmers, no fryers, no freezers." I asked him if we could tie in the shared seating area, just enough to keep a few bulbs lit and the big warmer going. "If you're careful," he said. "Don't try to run the soda machine or you'll blow the breaker. Stick to lights, crock pots, and common sense." That night I printed out a single sign and posted it on the wall next to the token board. "If the grid goes out, we're safe and open. Night bowl on us if you need it." I wrote it in black marker. No logo. Just the promise. Night bowl was Hank's idea. He said, "Forget menus. Just do one big pot, big ladles, clean carbs, something hot, something filling." We stocked up next morning. I bought 10 pounds of rice, 3 flats of broth concentrate, and a case of paper bowls. I hit the cheap shop across from the bus stop and grabbed plastic spoons, just in case we ran out. Vernon caught wind of it that afternoon. I got an email from him with the subject line, "Unapproved weather protocol." Inside it was a 3-paragraph rant about liability exposure, unapproved signage, potential violations of lease agreements, and something about unauthorized emergency messaging. I replied to the thread. I kept it simple. Forwarding to council for review. Then I added Franklin. 30 minutes later, Franklin replied to both of us with a calm little wall of citations and clause numbers from the lease carve-outs. Paragraph 2.7 on mutual use of common space in emergencies. Paragraph 4.2 on minor electrical modifications with pre-existing utility backup. Paragraph 6.1 on signage during disaster scenarios. Then he ended it with, "You are welcome to file objections formally. Until then, the existing provisions apply." Vernon didn't reply after that. By Thursday afternoon, Claudia showed up in boots and a scarf, and I pulled her aside. "Keep the token wall simple tonight," I told her. "No long notes. Just mark taken or available so we can move fast." She nodded, pulled a marker out of her coat pocket, and said, "Already made a new set of slips." Hank rolled in an hour early, brought his own knife, freshly honed, and a bundle of carrots in one hand. He dragged a steel down the blade like he was tuning a violin. "You expecting a crowd?" I asked. "Storms show you who your friends are," he said. "They also show you who disappears first." The first flakes started just before 6, light, drifting. But the radar said it wouldn't stay gentle for long. I checked the generator with Tariq one more time. He showed me the switch, the backup fuses, and how to reset the breakers if anything surged. The mall lights flickered once before dinner. The food court went quiet for half a second like it was holding its breath. "Not yet," Hank said, tapping his ladle on the rim of the pot. "But she's coming." I looked around at the crew, at Claudia pinning new slips to the wall, at Marisol stocking bottled water into a plastic bin with gloves on, at Rosa wiping down trays like she didn't want anyone to eat off a dirty one, storm or no storm. No panic, no drama, just quiet preparation from people who'd learned how to make something out of scraps. Whatever was coming, we'd meet it with the lights on and the ladles full. The rain turned to sleet right before sunset. By 6, it was full-on snow, heavy and wet, sticking to the skylights in clumps that blotted out the last of the gray. I was wiping down the kettle when the mall lights blinked twice and dropped us into pitch black. For a second, everything paused. Then the generator kicked in with a slow rumble, and a soft hum settled through the food court. One string of bulbs buzzed to life over the Ruth and Milton sign. The rest of the court stayed dark. We lit the rest of the market with the battery lanterns Claudia had stashed in the pretzel cabinet just in case. It looked like a church potluck in the middle of a disaster movie. Warm glow, folding tables, plastic bowls, people moving slow but with purpose. The first few people trickled in just after the generator started humming. Drivers who'd white-knuckled their way off the highway. A pair of EMTs still wearing their gear. A nurse in scrubs and a coat that wasn't thick enough for walking in that kind of cold. A family of 4 with a stroller and no power at home. Dad's hands red from pushing it through slush. We fired up the propane warmer and set the big aluminum pot on top. Hank stirred the mix like he was working on an engine. Rice, chopped chicken, broth thickened just enough to matter. It smelled like something that'd keep you alive. I kept the camp kettle going over a sterno flame behind the register, burned through the first gallon of drip, and started a second. The whole corner smelled like sanity, chicken and steam, and bitter coffee. Claudia stood at the token wall, sleeves rolled up over her hoodie. "Taken!" she called, then pulled a new slip from a tin. "Covered!" Her voice bounced like a bingo caller in a church basement. I watched strangers pin receipts without names and walk away like it wasn't even a choice anymore, just a reflex. Marisol ran trays toward the rink lobby, where a group of seniors had turned the benches into a coat nest. 2 kids curled up under a folding table and drifted off. No one told them to move. We left them alone. One guy came in late, beard frozen stiff, shoulders hunched like he was gearing for a fight. I braced for trouble, half expecting a scene. He didn't say a word, just took a bowl, ate it fast, and came back for another. Then he dropped a 20 into the jar, tore off a token, and mumbled, "For anyone colder than me." He walked back into the snow without looking at anyone. I turned to see Vernon standing in the shadow near the security office, coat zipped up to his chin, phone out, thumb tapping the screen like he was waiting to catch someone slip. He didn't offer to help. Didn't ask if anyone needed anything. Hank handed him a bowl without looking at him and said, "Eat before it gets cold." Then he walked back to the pot like nothing happened. The health inspector from earlier in the week showed up around 9. I didn't expect him, but there he was, with a grocery bag and a half smile. Inside, crackers, tea bags, and a sleeve of peanut butter. "I figured you were still here," he said. "Didn't feel right going home without dropping something off." "We're square on that cracked tile," I told him. "I've seen worse," he said, "in places built last year." We didn't talk about the report, didn't need to. By midnight, the pot was half empty, and the generator coughed like it had caught a cold. We shut off the side lights and left only the main bulb string glowing. People were still drifting in. We kept feeding them. Quiet hands, clean bowls, steady rhythm. Tariq showed up out of nowhere with a fresh can of diesel and a grin. "Still got it," he said, patting the generator like an old friend. "Man, this place used to mean something." I nodded. "Still does. Just needed a little noise again." Around 2 in the morning, after the soup ran low and the snow started to ease, I sat down for the first time in hours. My back screamed, but I didn't care. Claudia was packing up used slips into a Ziploc. Hank was scrubbing the ladle like it was made of gold. A woman in a parka tapped me on the shoulder, and before I could even stand, she pulled me into a hug that cracked something in my spine. "My dad used to bring me here," she said, voice shaking. "We'd split fries and talk about the dumbest stuff. He would have liked this." I nodded, couldn't get a word out. Just patted her back and let her hold on until she was ready to let go. Outside, the snow had finally slowed. Not stopped, but it wasn't angry anymore. The road crews were scraping the lots, and one plow paused at the rink doors, just long enough to give us a nod. We didn't save the world, just fed it, one bowl at a time. The Monday after the storm, Franklin's forensic guy showed up like a dentist appointment you can't talk your way out of. Clean haircut, pressed shirt, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He rolled in with a laptop, a receipt scanner, and a quiet kind of authority that made even Hank double-check his drawer total before walking past him. He didn't make speeches, didn't ask open-ended questions, just sat at the prep table with his laptop, working through transaction logs like he'd done it 100 times and could smell the fraud before he clicked the first line. 3 hours in, he printed a report with graphs even I could understand, color-coded, date-stamped, and direct as a hammer. The skimming was clear: dates, times, user IDs, some transactions tied straight to Vernon, others under his assistant's login, but the pattern was obvious. Training mode used right before close, cash tip adjustments that weren't in any approved policy, phantom comps matched to receipts that didn't exist. Franklin came in that afternoon, read the report standing up, and nodded once like a man who'd already called the play before the ball moved. He had the filings ready within the hour. The LLC board chair signed an interim agreement on the spot. Vernon was relieved of duties by close of business. He didn't fight it, no yelling, no tossed boxes. He came in, took one look at Franklin, and walked out without a word. No duffel bag, no announcement, just a silent exit in a coat that suddenly looked too thin for the season. We didn't throw a party. We cleaned. Then we fixed the damn schedule. Fair shifts. No more dead hours handed out like punishment. We bumped the base pay by $1.50 for everyone. Hank called it justice with a line cook discount. Nobody argued. The lot Milton had left me sat at the edge of town, near the old ferry slip where the board still creaked like someone was arriving. Not much to look at. Patchy gravel, 3 faded posts, a rusted utility hookup that looked more dangerous than useful. But Franklin handled the permits, and Tariq, God bless him, knew the one inspector who actually cared about grease traps and wastewater compliance. We called it Ruth and Milton's Field. Found the old hand-painted sign in the storage cage, and bolted it to a refurbished light pole that had been knocked crooked by a plow 10 years earlier. Still held strong. Late April. We lined up 5 trucks, tacos, dogs, bowls, coffee, and one that sold these weird spicy dumplings a local kid made in his garage before going legit. Claudia showed up in a puffy jacket with borrowed scissors from the post office. She cut the ribbon while Della sat in a camping chair wrapped in 2 blankets, face pale but proud. She didn't say much, but the way she looked at me, like she finally saw the part of my life that didn't sound like disappointment, that was enough. We kept the kindness tokens alive across all 5 trucks. Each one had a string of receipts running along the side of the rail fence. 1 taco, small bowl, plain dog, black coffee. No complicated systems. If you could give, you gave. If you needed it, you took one. No guilt. No announcements. No tracking. 2 weeks later, a small local bank reached out, said they'd read about the storm night in a community blog and wanted to offer a mini grant. I said yes to lights and a sink upgrade, said no to a 12-foot vinyl banner with their logo stretched across the fence like we were NASCAR. One morning I snapped a photo of Hank standing under the old sign, hands deep in his coat pockets, eyes squinting like the sun was his enemy. He hates pictures, always has. But he let me take that one. Just the one. By the second Saturday, the lot was full. Families, old couples, young kids. A few guys who used to work for the city before it downsized to hell. Some people remembered Milton. Some just came because they heard the food was hot and no one would look at you funny if you were short $2. I looked around and saw people who'd never agree on politics, jobs, or anything with a slogan on it, just sitting together, eating something warm with the snow finally melting around their boots. That felt like winning. Not profit, not revenge, just the kind of win that made me think Milton had known exactly what he was doing that day in the food court. I'm 58 now, and the food court doesn't move like it used to. Half the old vendors are gone or turned into weird pop-ups. The roof still leaks near the smoothie stand when it rains sideways, but our corner, under the Ruth and Milton sign, still glows at night like a porch light someone forgot to turn off. We keep 2 seats warmed, always, in case someone needs to sit with a bowl and be left alone. It was a Tuesday in January when Vernon walked in. He looked thinner than I remembered, like life had chipped him down piece by piece. His coat hung off his shoulders, and his hair was mostly gray now, longer than I expected. He stood at the front for a second, holding his hat in both hands like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come closer. I felt my shoulders tense before he even said a word. "Elliot," he said, voice soft, eyes everywhere but mine. "I was wondering if you might have any light shifts up front. Doesn't need to be much. Just stocking, maybe wiping tables. Couple hours behind the counter if something opens up." He didn't give a speech, didn't make excuses. Just stood there asking like a man who'd already been turned down a few places before walking in. I thought about the dead shifts, the cost variance fines, the way he made me recite that final warning in front of a blinking red camera. I thought about my mom juggling co-pays and Claudia texting me about overdue books. I thought about standing ankle-deep in bleach water while Vernon smiled like it was a lesson I needed to learn. Behind me, the crew kept their eyes on the line. Nobody said a word. "The team's full," I said, and that was true. Vernon nodded like he'd expected it. Then I reached under the counter and pulled the jar toward me. I keep 1 token in there, tucked under the others for moments exactly like this. I slid it across, plain slip, neat writing, night bowl, plus coffee. "There's a table open by the mop station," I said. "It's warm. You know the one." At first he said nothing, just stared at the slip like it burned a little to hold it. Then he gave a tight nod and said, "I appreciate the meal. I'll keep looking." He walked over, slow and quiet, and sat like his bones hurt. Ate every spoonful like it had been longer than a day since his last hot meal. Didn't rush, didn't talk. Nobody pointed. Nobody whispered. Rosa cleared the trays. Claudia wiped down the counter like it was just another Tuesday. The line kept moving. I stayed by the register and watched the door, just in case he decided to stand up and say something loud or ugly, but he didn't. When he was done, he walked back to the counter and set the bowl down gently. "You run a good place," he said. I looked him in the eye and said, "We try." That was it. He walked out into a snow that wasn't going to let up, and the door closed soft behind him. Franklin still sends a card every November. Sometimes he drops by with his junior clerk for a coffee and a hot dog. He always studies the wall for a long minute before saying anything. "Milton would have liked how you did it," he said last time. I believe that. I have to. On storm nights, when the power cuts out and the bulbs flicker on generator hum, when the steam rises from the bowls and the token slips hang quiet in the light, I can almost see Milton and Ruth sitting in their old seats, watching people be kind without making a show out of it. Some folks call that karma. I don't know about that. I just know that a small thing, a chair, a soup, a cup of coffee, changed the road under my feet, and I decided not to waste it. What about you? If someone who once treated you unfairly came back years later asking for help, would you give it or turn them away? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story hit you, please like and subscribe. It's just one click for you, but it means a lot to us. And if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment saying it was good or share your own thoughts. That support really keeps this channel going.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.